The initial shriek never made it to the heavens. Dust and terror caused it to die in her throat. May Larkin sprinted barefoot into Palm Canyon's flaming underbrush. Her skin was wounded by thorns and her breath was ragged. Two of her sister's men, who were assigned to fetch her back, either silent or dead, could be heard behind her. She fell hard to the ground after tripping over a rock. The sun, which was hot enough to boil her blood, was a blade slicing over the valley. Her knees were raw as she crawled forward, her hand shaking. Then the hiss reached her ears. It originated from the parched grass next to her leg. A warning, followed by a burst of motion. When the rattlesnake disappeared, leaving just blood and fear, pain ripped through her leg like fire. She reached for a stick and attempted to stand, but her body failed her. The venom burnt quickly. Her vision became hazy. Her vision became hazy. It was a battle for every breath. Despite pressing her hand over the cut, the blood continued to flow. It beat out in time with her waning optimism. She kept hearing her sister's voice. "Mate, you ought to have kept quiet. It was never your land." Everything her mother had promised her was gone, including the land and the water. Stolen by Evelyn and Silas, her spouse. They were dishonest. She had never seen the deed on which they had signed her name. They even sent weapons when she attempted to stop them. She was now lost, alone, and dying in the savage June heat. She said something to no one while buzzards circled far above, patient and determined. "Don't let them discover me first, God." Hours passed in the span of minutes. Her mouth splintered. It burnt in her throat. Then she heard an unexpected sound amid the fuzz. Beatats on the hoof. Closer, slower, and more measured. Through the shimmering heat, a figure emerged. A chestnut horse is being led by a man wearing a big hat and a red scarf around his neck. She briefly believed she was having a dream. Then her face was covered by his shadow. She attempted to move, but was unable. Her voice faltered. "It's overly large. It is painful." A heartbeat passed while the rancher froze. He remained still. He noticed the dark, enraged blood, the swelling, and the wound. He was also aware. He went down on one knee next to her. Calm hands, flint-sharp eyes. After tearing a strip from his sleeve, he applied it over the bite. Cole's hands worked quickly, securing the towel tightly to prevent the venom from spreading. He clenched his jaw. "No doctor for Miles," he said in a quiet voice. "This is a fool's chance, but it's all we got." Then, with his breath calm, he leaned in closer and did what no one else dared. With a grimace, he spat out the poison he could manage after his knife's sting opened the incision by cutting shallowly. Her body shook, her pulse slowed, and the sky swirled above her. The fever has already begun to spread. Above her, the sky whirled. The burn of the venom exiting her flesh and the rhythm of his breathing caused her world to shrink. She opened her eyes once more to see him staring down at her, his red scarf now smeared with dirt and a smear of perspiration in his face. "You're safe for the time being," he whispered softly. She could hear the weight of those words, though. "Safe for now? Not for long." Heat shimmered on the horizon. Somewhere out there. Silas and Evelyn continued to hunt. They refused to halt, not until they owned every acre of land and every drop of water. May spoke in barely audible whispers. The question lingered in the air like a ghost as the wind blew through the parched palms. Why would a stranger risk his life for cowboy love stories for someone like me? Would goodwill last in a place where showing charity invariably resulted in violence? The light was different when May opened her eyes once more. Now it was softer, warm, and golden, like honey in the late summer. She was still alive. She didn't believe that, at least. She had a tight wrap over her leg. Her head lay on a saddle roll under a wool blanket that had a horse and smoking odor about it. Nearby, there was the crackle of a little fire. Above, a gentle hum of wind blew across the parched palms. She blinked slowly as she tried to recall what had transpired. Then she caught sight of the cowboy. He was sitting a few feet away, holding a tin cup while he observed the sky. The breeze caused the scarlet scarf around his neck to sway slightly. He appeared composed, maybe too composed for the type of day she had just made it through. Her throat was parched and dry when she attempted to speak. After turning and hearing the slight sound, he approached. "Softly, you'll live," he said. The deep, steady voice belonged to a guy who had seen worse and had learnt to remain calm. She took a deep breath. He nodded briefly. "You saved me," he said. "I guess I did." You were fortunate that I was traveling that route. A canteen was given to her by him. The water was chilly and stinging in her throat as she drank slowly. It felt like life was returning with each sip. Her gaze strayed to the flames. Where are we? A mile east of the ridge is Palm Canyon. My equine needed to rest. You do too. I'm not being transported to your ranch by Western Tales. Not quite yet. Too gloomy. Too far away. You wouldn't be able to fit in. She cast her gaze to her bandaged leg. Her voice cracked. I believed I had vanished. He used a stick to poke the fire. Not right now. They sat quietly for a while. There was still the humming silence of the desert in your bones. May eventually stated that they will pursue me. Cole didn't inquire as to who. He simply listened. The water my mother left me is what they seek. Claimed to have stolen it. Said I ought to vanish. His face was half in shadow as he leaned back. Here, people struggle to get water. More difficult than their blood fighting. She gazed directly into the fire. Why are you assisting me? He looked her in the eye. Because I was once assisted by a stranger. I decided that now was my turn. He stopped and traced an ancient scar on his wrist with his fingertips, which was hardly visible in the firelight. A drought like this one claimed my brother's life. A man told us about his final water with the Wild West Stories podcast. Didn't create it on their own. He lowered his voice. You carry some debts with you forever. Her chest hurt because of the way he said it. In this country, kindness was uncommon. The flames were low. The stars came out. She made an effort to stay awake, but the fatigue was too much. One inquiry was the last thing on her mind before she fell asleep. What sort of man would put his life in danger for a stranger? The following morning arrived slowly, covered in dust and orange paint. Cole had been packing the saddle and looking at the sky before the sun came up. The only sounds in the world when May woke up were the crackling of cooling ash and the gentle snort of his horse. The fever had subsided, but her leg hurt. As he tightened the straps, he inquired, Are you ready to ride? She could hardly stand, but she nodded. As if she were made of glass, he delicately raised her and placed her in the saddle. We'll go slowly. It's half a day west of my ranch. There you'll be secure. Once more, the word safe. But for the time being, she believed it because of the way he stated it. They passed the mountains that reflected the early sun as they rode through the parched palms. The land was vast and unending, serene but vibrant. May listened to the wind and horses' steady beat as they followed. My sister Evelyn wasn't always like that, she added quietly after a while. Everything was altered by the drought. Cole took a moment to talk. He simply let the horse to maintain its speed. May continued. She wed the indebted rancher Silas Glay. They forged my mother's papers, sold off half the herd, then told the town I ran away with the money. Cole scowled as the water ran low. That is a terrible deception to put up with. May's voice trembled as she replied. They nearly made it work too. But then I discovered the actual action. Silas sent men after me when I went to show the sheriff. I got into that canyon in that way. In the dust, Cole spat Wild West romance films numbers. Here, water is more valuable than gold. You are given command of a spring. Everything surrounding it is your property. They continued riding till the sun rose. May was scarcely able to keep her eyes open when the ranch finally came into view. It was a tough but resilient place. A barn that has endured years of severe wind and a long wooden fence. Cole led her to the porch and assisted her in getting down. This is where you rest. I'll let everyone know. I owe the sheriff a favor. May gave him a look. Do you genuinely believe they will pay attention to me? He flashed a weary grin. Though everything moves slowly here, truth eventually finds its way. We'll get them to pay attention. She experienced a sense of calm for the first time in weeks. Nevertheless, she felt sick to her stomach at the idea of Evelyn and Silas out there. They refused to halt. That kind of person never did. Over the hills, the sun started to set. Once more, the air became gentle and golden. May said to herself in a whisper, Perhaps there is yet justice in this wilderness. Cole's deep voice responded. If it doesn't, we'll dig it up ourselves, from someplace behind her. That promise was carried over the arid terrain by the wind, a compelling enough promise to keep you interested. Therefore, have a cup of tea or perhaps some whiskey before we ride into what happens next. Tell me, please, what time is it where you are and from where you are listening? If you haven't already, click the subscribe button to ensure you don't miss what occurs at Whitaker Ranch when the pass shows up. Whitaker Ranch was enveloped in a thick, breath-holding night. There was no moon, only the sound of old wood creaking and the wind blowing across parched grass. Cole quietly cleaned his weapon while seated on the porch. A man who had witnessed too many long nights like this one was depicted by the flickering fire in the lantern across his face. May slept on a cot by the window inside, her bandaged leg resting on a cushion. She mumbled in her sleep and stirred every few minutes. Despite the fact that her fever had subsided, the terror persisted behind her eyes. Cole poured a little drink for himself and listened. It was too silent. The insects had also stopped talking. Silence never meant tranquilly out here. He noticed a slight sparkle close to the fence line as he stood there. Perhaps the metal is catching fire. He put down the drink and grabbed his weapon. "Easy now," he said in a low voice. The sound of boots on the porch roused May. Her heart leaped. She pushed herself up, moaning in pain. "Cole," he said, turning with alert eyes. "Remain motionless. Avoid making any noise. The horses were agitated, I saw." The gate's tiny brook then appeared. Cole squatted down close to the window. Two shadows were moving along the barn, he noted. The same men who rode for cash rather than charity. May was having trouble breathing. "Is it them?" she said in a whisper. "Could be," Evelyn's partners said. Or worst, he spoke quietly while chambering around. They chose the wrong evening to cause problems. The front door echoed with a sudden knock. Slow, methodical. Then another, more difficult. Cole said nothing. Through the darkness, a man's voice could be heard. "We are aware that she is inside. Give her up, old guy, and nobody will be harmed." Cole remained silent. He passed a second weapon to May after walking to the corner and grabbing it. As she took it, her hand trembled. "Have you shot a few times before? Then just in case, keep it aimed at the door." The men outside burst out laughing. Something that makes your stomach turn is the type of laugh. The door was kicked by one of them. "Are you certain?" "You can't hide her forever," said another. "Her sister desires her return." The stream of leather and the faint clink of spurs were carried by the wind as it howled through the fragile palms. As a shadow swiftly and silently passed the window, May's breath caught. The word struck May, her sister Evelyn, whom she had previously trusted with everything, like a wolf surrounding its prey. Anger blazed hotter than tears in her eyes. Cole inhaled deeply. His eyes were fixed on the door as he mumbled, "All right then. Let's check to see if justice is still alive." The click of a hammer retracting was the subsequent sound. Final and sharp. May's heart was pounding as she held the weapon tightly. The sound of a horse neighed pierced the darkness outside. She understood then that something greater than the two of them was on the horizon. However, neither of them was aware at the time that the true threat was not waiting outside that door. They had underestimated how close it was already. It was too calm to be genuine the morning following the shooting. Smoke curled through the pale dawn light as it traveled across the meadow. With their firearms flung far into the ground, two men were lying bound close to the fence. Cole loomed above them, his eyes steady yet weary, his face haggard. May was sitting on the edge of the cot inside the house, her hand still shaking and her leg bandaged once more. The strong, acrid scent of gunpowder filled the air. Cole entered slowly, placed his rifle beside the door, and gave her a look that conveyed the conclusion of the situation. For the time being, however, then he added quietly, "They're done." One of them spoke. "The sheriff is en route. Silas and Evelyn won't be fleeing for very long." May took a while to respond. She simply traced the patterns of dried blood and dirt on her hands. Her voice was quiet when she eventually spoke. "Cole, I don't want retribution. All I want is my life to return." He gave a nod. "That's what we'll get then." They rode together to town later that day. After taking the men, the sheriff sent word north. Evelyn and Silas were apprehended attempting to cross the ridge in the evening. When justice finally arrived, it felt cleaner than May had anticipated. As she faced May across the dusty room in the sheriff's office, Evelyn stood motionless, her eyes icy. May responded, "You took everything," in a steady voice that belied the pain in her chest. Evelyn looked aside. There are no more words to lie with. On the table was the falsified document, together with its ink, a declaration of their avarice. No yelling, no anger, just the truth at last taking the place of lies that had persisted for too long. Weeks went by. After the rain, the ground grew green once more. Even after her leg healed, May continued to limp when she went too far. Cole constructed a little seat near the spring. At times, they would sit quietly and listen to the water as the sun sank. May remarked, "Funny thing about pain," as she gazed out across the desert one evening. "It never truly goes away. It simply changes form." Cole grinned. "Yes, but hope does too. Perhaps that is the challenge of living in a harsh environment. It reminds you of your true nature by breaking you just enough. And occasionally, just when you think you're done, someone shows up and shows you're not. Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you needed someone to be there for you? Perhaps the more pertinent query is, who are you willing to attend the next time? Please like this video if this tale touched you in any way. You won't believe how much it helps. Additionally, please click the subscribe button and follow me out in the wild if you would want to hear more stories like this one.